this video is an extension of the video I gave you guys last week, breakdown interview of JJL, and just more of his full story behind why he made that album and the full context of his life leading up to that point. What was interesting about the talk is that this conversation led into how deconstruction is an issue in the Western church, I find, and also how it can be curbed, just because it's definitely been a trending pattern I've seen over the years. And it's something personal to me because I've been through that myself. But he also talks about how reconstruction looks like as well, and how believing in God has kept him endured thus far. You know, how do you work through world issues, politics, and all that, and on the other side of that, still find Jesus. Interestingly as well, he talks about some of the, I won't call them disses, but the call outs he made, you know, calling out Ruslan in his music, as he also issues him a challenge as well. There's more stuff he speaks about in this conversation, but one more interesting thing to note is him just giving descriptors of Raul 2 being on the way for WHATUPRG, because I think his story just relates well to what we've seen from RG up until this point. Understanding this conversation is going to be a great insight into that and what dealing with immigration is like. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoy this interview. I'll leave it right here. Take care, guys. Talk to the people, man. How are you doing?
So, man, I'm doing good right now. You caught me at a great time. Feeling a lot better than probably what people heard on the album, which I'm more than happy to get into, but I'm in a pretty good place in my life right now. I'm actually, as I was telling you, I'm at an internship that I'm doing right now. I got to know one of Tyler, the Creator's old engineers for his concerts. He actually left, I think, like a tour or two ago to start up his own studio, and it happened to be over here in Minneapolis. So I've been doing that, working full time, doing a lot of stuff with Fast Break. Lately, we've been doing reviews and interviews every Wednesday. And then obviously I've been focusing on my own music as well. So life's been great. Life's been busy, which is the polar opposite of what it was when I was making the album. So yeah, like definitely the polar opposite in a great way.
Yeah, no. That definitely sounds like it, because it kind of seemed when I was going through this album and dissecting it, it definitely seemed like you would definitely, it definitely was not a good time. But you told me things have changed since then, and we'll get a bit into that and everything else. And I guess like the first thing I wanted to ask is, so explain, and especially for people watching, if you guys watched my review of JJL's album, one thing you'll understand is that when it comes to immigration, it is quite a dicey subject. There's people on different ends of it. And what I want to start by opening up is explain your situation for people out there, just because a lot of people think when it comes to immigration, things are black and white. And it certainly isn't that way. It's not the case all the time. And so I think the best, especially for people to understand, like, you know what I mean, like your story and argument and where you're coming from, like just explain your situation and storyline a bit, especially because it'll make sense for the album. So yeah.
Yeah, so to keep it simple, I was born in Mexico. I came here when I was about 6 years old. And obviously, when you come to a different country, especially at that age, I mean, really, when you do anything at that age, you don't really think about like the why. You just kind of go along to with whatever is going on, right? I came here with a legal entry. I came here with a visa and everything. But we stayed. There was a lot of family reasons why we stayed. And then around the age of 14, I realized that I was undocumented, essentially. Before I had turned 16, the Obama administration implemented something that was called the DACA program, which essentially is an executive order that, technically speaking, can be removed by any president. But the DACA program is one of those things that has been around for such a long time and has affected so many lives that it's one of those executive orders where it's like, off a technicality, technically, whatever administration wants to can remove it. The issue is that it's changed so many lives and it has affected so many people that it's almost been treated as if it's law now, in a way where people only feel comfortable removing it if the Supreme Court justice decides to remove it, which is what the Trump administration has tried to do beforehand. But yeah, before I even get into all that, essentially that's my story about my immigration situation. Is I grew up thinking that I was American, and then the ball was dropped on me when I was 14, 15 years old that I wasn't. And then shortly after that, came an opportunity to basically feel like I was a little bit normal. For those that don't know, the DACA program is not permanent citizenship. It's not permanent residency. It's something that has to be renewed every 2 years, and you have to keep a clean record in order to maintain it. Anything small, any infringement, whatever, can be a reason why you have it removed. So my entire life, even though I've had documentation for half my life, I've still had to act a different way than most of my friends did. So even when, like, I was younger and I was doing dumb kid stuff that everybody does when they're younger, I always had to be conscious about a lot of stuff. A lot of my friends chalked it up to me being paranoid, but even when I had documentation, I couldn't live the same way that my friends could live. I had to act differently. I had to be more careful. I had to be more prepared about anything that could happen to protect myself, because I never wanted to risk any potential of me losing my normalcy, essentially, because my DACA only allows me to have a driver's license to go to school and to work. Aside from that, and then obviously like the normal stuff like filing taxes and things like that, which many don't know, but undocumented immigrants actually do. They make up a large portion of those that pay taxes, like in the billions. They just pay with an ITIN number. The difference between me and someone that is entirely undocumented is I do have a temporary social security number that is treated differently than an ITIN number, but it's still not that many steps ahead. So yeah, although I am technically not undocumented, at any point it could be revoked for whatever reason if a certain administration is in and it pushes for the removal of the program. Any misstep that I have, even as small as like anything, could remove the program. Like I have to be on my best behavior and be as uh, with the law as possible in order to maintain this.
Okay. And what makes it complicated within this, well, yeah, the twist that makes it even more complicated is the fact that, if I remember correctly, you said so during this period of time, why you were in hiding, because correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a period of time where the removal process got delayed, right? And so you were pretty much like, so pretty much in between that time, like you were basically on the run. Is that right?
In a way, I wouldn't say that I was in the run. Essentially, I was in hiding because I
Hiding,
didn't
sorry,
want to
hiding.
risk.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
so I didn't want to risk anything. Off a technical basis, attorneys will tell you that because you do your application within the essentially like USCIS tells you that you're supposed to do it within 3 months before your permit is expired. However, I did mine well in advance because I kind of knew like what to expect based on everything that was going on. So attorneys will tell you that technically you're in the clear. However, the Trump administration did not care, and it was very prevalent when they came here and the ICE raids were occurring, and people with documentation, whether it be residency, whether it be DACA, were pulled to the side. So for me, it was one of those things where it was like, while I am aware that I'm, a lighter skinned Latino. I could maybe pass as like Middle Eastern here and there. Like I do understand that like there's still a risk for me to be profiled. A lot of people were profiled based on the way that they were looked and they were pulled to the side. People were asked, like there's endless videos that you can watch. There's situations that friends of mine saw firsthand that they videotaped and sent to me. Um, and I saw ICE for myself actually the few times that I like went out. And I was in hiding. So it was one of those things where it's like I wasn't technically on the run, but because the Trump administration was indirectly causing a lot of
Hmm.
the slowdowns of approvals that still are happening right now. Thankfully, like I have mine now after months of waiting. Um, they're still occurring right now. So my slowdown like left me to be an undocumented immigrant essentially for 2 months. And by undocumented, I meant that I literally couldn't do anything that my normal legal procedures would allow me to do. So, for example, like I obviously didn't work during those processes. Like I stayed away from doing anything that made me any income. I stayed away from anything that could affect my long-term citizenship because right now that's what I'm working on, thankfully.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, but essentially that's what it was. Where the delays caused me to not have any sort of protection whatsoever. And not the technicality, I could have argued something if like ICE pulled me to the side, but with how the current administration is going on right now, it just wasn't worth the risk. So essentially, my wife hid me, dude. Like I rode a trunk with a few times that I did like get out of my apartment. Like it was
Mm.
not fun. Like it was. I know that a lot of people don't like to say it, and a lot of people are gonna think of conspiracy theories like years from now, kind of like how they do with like anything after a certain amount of time passes. But it's like I rode in a trunk, dude. Like I'm not gonna say that it was as bad as the
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mustache man or anything like that, but it did get to a point where a lot of people were doing that over here, where it was people were riding trunks, people were being hidden away, people were feeling safe in. Honestly, there were some stories that I heard of people hiding in attics. Like, it wasn't as bad as, the 40s, like I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned in the album, but it was reminiscent of those times.
Okay. 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 Well, that's interesting. So yeah, that's really interesting, and that's literally what I wanted, just people to capture, and just in terms of just like your story out there. And one thing, one thing that, and I'm gonna pull it out and read it here, but when I was putting together your video, I remember seeing there was a piece here or a picture. Well, it was on your album cover, but this is what interested me. So essentially, I'm pulling out your album cover here, but um, it says, higher the story of an. Sorry, is it higher? I just want to make sure it's higher.
So the actual technical name is Yair.
What? Google
Yeah.
told me it's a. I swear Google spelled it out
You
the
almost got it
pronunciation.
right, actually. I didn't want to overcorrect it, but technically the name that you say, that's my middle name. It's actually Yair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no, no,
That's
it's
interesting.
okay, man. Trust me, like you're not gonna be the first or the last to mess up the
Yeah. Yeah.
name.
Because I knew something was off, but then I was like, oh, okay. But
You got
hey,
the
yeah.
ear part. You got the ear part like correct, but it's Yair. Yeah.
Okay. Yair. Okay. So Yair is correct pronunciation, but Yair is the story of an immigrant who wrestles with faith, challenges the church, and discovers that losing religion may be the very thing that leads you back to God. And
Mhm.
I kind of just wanted to hang around there for a second.
Yeah.
So just explain, like, what did that process look like, especially the latter half of what I just read there. Just because to me, this was a case of something I think um, many Christians like have been through. Like I've been through myself. But it's when you realize there's a world outside of yourself, with all of you know, with God and everything, and you end up getting challenged essentially. So um, and which goes down like the path of deconstruction essentially. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like something I went through years ago. I think it's something recently, like, I think Paris Caris, when he was talking about his recent album, like he talked about that a bit. Just because stuff like a lot of stuff will challenge you essentially and
Yeah.
push you to the brink. But yeah, just explain that very bit there. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like losing religion may be the very thing that leads you back to God.
Yeah. So I
May
mean, I
not
want to
be.
start before I even like get into like the where I lost God, lost religion.
Mm,
I understand a lot of the struggles that I feel like a lot of, and I'll just say it bluntly, a lot of the things that I disagree with are Christian conservative nationalism,
mm,
white evangelical Christian nationalism, to be
mm,
exact. But I also understand a lot of ways that people get to those points because I feel like a lot of it ends up in two places. It either ends up in pseudo intellectualism to try to sound smart to back up things that quite literally are not biblically backed up, or B, you go down the QAnon like conspiracy like rabbit hole, and that leads you to essentially either go down an extremist route or find out that politics suck and that everyone is trash, and then you end up not taking responsibility for any sort of political party whatsoever and potentially even disregard the fact that politics like affects people. I understand what it's like to go through both those pipelines because at a certain point, I tried to feel like I was normal when I was younger. My parents always harped on to me about like, like, hey, remember you are an immigrant, like you're not the same as everybody. But obviously, me being a rebellious like college kid at a certain point, I tried to live like everybody else, and I ended up in a lot of situations where back then I was like, oh, I got lucky, like the cops didn't catch me doing this stupid stuff with my friends because I'm in college or whatever. But the reality is, if I had gone caught in certain situations that to other people would have ended up in like petty misdemeanors or like whatever, for me that would have meant deportation. And it took me years to realize this, but I tried to feel the same as everybody else, but the reality is I could never be like everybody else. So a lot of the pseudo intellectualism that you see amongst pastors, amongst leaders of the church, and so on and so forth, I never had the privilege of being able to believe those things. Not once. I was never handed that privilege whatsoever. I had to look at things from a concrete level. So when it came to law, when it came to policy, I could never just chalk up things to, oh, the elites just handle everything, so politics don't matter. or the left is evil because abortion or because of this. Like I had to look at everything from a concrete level, and maybe Christians will disagree with me, but 7 to 8 times out of 10, like Christian nationalism is extremely wrong. They're extremely wrong on their politics. They're extremely wrong on their policy. And it led me down to a point where once Donald Trump got in 2024, even right before the ICE raid started to happen, I started to look at the Bible from more of a scholarly perspective. And when you look at the Bible from a scholarly perspective, unfortunately, that can lead you down a rabbit hole that messes your faith up to the point where you start to look at things from an over realistic lens, which I think that looking at things from a realistic lens is a good thing, because it
Mm,
makes things concrete. But I think at a certain point, you lose the wonder of God. And I think at a certain point, because I was trying to combat a lot of pseudo intellectualism that was going on in Christianity, somewhere along the lines, I started defending being agnostic and not believing in God because of how bitter I was towards people that were trying to, honestly, whether it was directly or indirectly, they were trying to deport me essentially. Obviously there were people that voted for this. There were people that promote this. And to be honest, even like a middle ground stance was something that didn't sit well with me. I saw churches that would stand concretely on things that were Trump policies. Like I'll give you an example, and like we don't gotta like talk about like the specifics of it. But for example,
sure.
there's a church that I used to attend, and when the whole Venezuela thing happened, we're not going to get into like the like who was correct on this political thing because like both political parties had their like own differences on it, right? You had people that were more on the Christian nationalism side, like trying to excuse Trump about this or like multiple other issues. But when it came down to this ICE thing, where it was like no ifs, ands, or buts about it, this is wrong. You had churches and pastors post, including people that I knew personally that were pastors, posting about how love the ICE agent like you would love the undocumented immigrant. It's like, dude, can we stop this kumbaya thing? Like at a certain point, like the kumbaya thing just pushed me to be like, all right, you know what? Maybe the problem is church. Maybe the problem is religion. Maybe the problem is God. And I think like losing God and losing religion for a short period of time is what eventually brought me back to him because it brought me back to the basics, which is like, look, man, people suck. Yeah, like people suck.
Yeah.
Churches are humans. Like this all sucks. And the reality is, yeah, like scholarly work might debunk all of our beliefs, to be honest with you. But what I can't allow is for scholarly work or these life experiences to remove what's true in my life. And that is that Jesus saved me. Jesus saved me. And while I don't have all the answers still, and I'm still like in real time trying to reconstruct my faith, what I can say is Jesus saved me and Jesus doesn't want me to leave him. Um, so while I wish I had a better answer as far as like how faith looks like in my life, to give you like an answer, like I kind of like losing God for a certain amount of time made me realize how much I really needed him, but I just need to figure out what it looks like in my life now again. Because for such a long time, I was trying to justify certain things no matter how harmful it was towards me. And then when I couldn't justify it anymore, I turned to to be essentially for a short period of time being agnostic.
Mm, wow. Okay. Yeah. That is essentially like the same route. I like similar route I took. Just more so, just more on the side of like the white man's religion and everything.
Hmm.
Because ultimately, like what you realize after a while is, and this is usually the stage people get at before they get to that point of deconstructing, is they essentially um they essentially like take Christianity and they view Western Christianity as Christianity itself. And what happens there is basically, especially American Christianity, like when you view Christianity as that version, what happens is when things come up that the, you know what I mean, like the political aspects and all that stuff doesn't explain too well. Eventually, what starts happening is it's very easy for someone to kind of like stray off, and
Hmm.
then eventually, like when you do the research for yourself and everything, at least on my end, it was like I had to realize that Christianity is more than just this Western religion, and then
Yep,
you got to
100%.
go deeper, yeah. And then
Hmm.
that's essentially what saved me from like deconstructing completely and just like reconstructing things piece by piece. But um, yeah, I totally get that. Just because I think, and that's another reason, like I think people need to hear this interview. It's because like this is an issue that essentially I think a lot of Christians run through. And one of the things I wish churches did better is helping people tackle this, just because I think
Yeah.
what could happen too is there could be a lot of denialism when it comes to
Yeah.
deconstructing, and almost as if it doesn't exist. But
Churches need to stop being scared, bro. Like, to be honest with you, sorry to cut you off, but churches need to stop being scared.
mhm,
Like, I understand that it's not fun, especially if you are a church that's based in a certain area. Like, for example, and I'll just say it like how it is. If you're a church based in a super suburban, like, white area, I know it's scary to be that person that says like certain things are wrong, but it's like, bro, like what are we doing? Like, are we
mhm,
trying to like just fill people with a pipe dream and make them like live in an echo chamber? Or do we want to like show them what the real Jesus would do and what the real Jesus would stand for?
mhm. So then that also, what was I gonna say? I was gonna finish up by saying like, essentially, if churches did a better job giving sound teaching, like foundational teaching, you know what I mean, from their youth all the way to their adulthoods, people would be less likely to deconstruct at all. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So when you do give people like a false version of Christianity, like that's essentially the reason why people deconstruct. Just because I've seen like people get on podcasts, pastors get on podcasts, and they're just ranting, rambling, and they're just tired of like saying like why are people deconstructing when in reality,
Mhm.
people just, you know what I mean, even the Bible just talks about like I think it was like the parable of like the sand, and you know, like when the storms came and everything, like literally that is an example of like why, you know, churches in the West need to have like strong foundational teaching. That's fundamental. But you had a bar, you know what I mean, in your Metro Search song where you called out Rusan, and I don't know if people like had caught it like that, but I
Yeah.
mean, like, what pushed you to go beyond and just kind of like deliver that bar with how you felt, with what you felt at that time?
I'll talk about it. I don't mind.
Okay,
So
cool.
where that bar came from, and by the way, I love Ruslan. Like I think that Ruslan is one of the biggest influences on not only me but a lot of Christian artists, especially if you were part of those like critiques that he used to do. The thing that I did with that bar, and honestly, there was other people that I jabbed at. I don't know if you caught it, but I also mentioned Forrest Frank on that same record.
Oh, nice.
Uh,
Ooh.
yeah. Some of forest fires, and I'm gonna keep it frank. You're a false prophet, like something along those lines. Like I said,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So
Wow.
essentially, so the reason why I brought up both of them, and I'll start with Forrest Frank, is because this is not to say that Forrest Frank is truly like a false prophet or anything like that. But what I didn't appreciate was if you guys saw that video that he made when Charlie Kirk died, and this is not me justifying that Charlie Kirk should have been killed or like anything like that. I think we can all agree that life is precious. Like I think that's very bluntly, but to have this black or white stance, especially as someone that was directly affected by a lot of the policies that Charlie Kirk pushed and people like him pushed, I think it's very ignorant to do what Forrest Frank did, which he posted the selfie video where he said 30,000 people unfollowed me because I said RIP Charlie Kirk and I proclaimed Jesus as Lord. Good. I don't need you guys following me. And I think that's very ignorant considering the fact that Forrest Frank also works with black and brown artists. Black
Okay,
and
okay.
brown artists that are directly affected by the policies that Charlie Kirk pushed. That is not to say that Charlie Kirk deserved to die, but if you're that ignorant to the fact that people are affected by these policies that the person that you pushed an RIP for pushed for, that's not to
Mm,
say that like you should be okay with people like bashing his name or saying good like like he deserves to be 6 feet under. Like I'm not gonna be that person to say that that's okay. But if you can't put yourself in those people's shoes and understand why you were unfollowed and just chuck it up to you're being persecuted for being Christian, you've officially lost the plot.
okay.
You've
Mm,
lost the plot if you're taking this as a persecution for your faith, when in reality, this is not a persecution whatsoever. This is people bowing out of supporting you because you are pushing for somebody that pushes for policy that directly affects them. Now,
mm,
how that translated into Ruslan is Ruslan used to be the politically agnostic guy that stood for both sides. But then somewhere along the lines, and he's more than welcome to watch this. I don't have an issue talking about this with him, but it was very clear that at a certain point when he started navigating from having a focus on different topics, whether it was like one day it was music, one day it was politics, one day it was religion, to just purely talking about faith-based topics, and then stepping away entirely from music and specifically pandering to the right-wing media, with every once in a while having like a middle ground, like nuanced take,
Mm,
his channel like pumped up. So a lot of times when I compare the content that he has right now compared to the content that he used to have back in the day, because back in the day he would challenge like right wing people. Like I literally have a video that
mm,
I screen recorded. He removed it where in that very video he stated it was his battle against like this pastor that was trying to proclaim a bunch of things about Trump and blah blah, and like Ruslan spit all the facts. He was like, "Hey, like you know what, dude? Fact check me. In 1970 something, the Supreme Court justice, which was like dominantly Republican, were the ones that pushed for Roe v. Wade. Fact check me." And he's just going off on all this stuff that basically contradicts the idea that the Republican Party is a pro life party. And he's
mm,
not saying it in a way that's saying like, "Yo, let me vote for like Democrats." He was saying it more in like, "Yo, like, what are we doing right now? Like, let's stop like having like alignment to parties when in reality both of these parties are corrupt." And the Republican Party that this pastor that he was talking about and other people are talking about, like, dude, like you guys are pushing for parties that all suck. Like, you know what I'm
mm,
saying? He deleted that video. He's deleted a lot of evidence of him taking this more like middle ground stance of like, this is not a Democratic stance. This is not a Republican stance, but this is like a Jesus stance. And me playing like the even field to, it's very obvious that now he panders to more conservatives. And what
mm,
I didn't appreciate is I felt like, and maybe I'm wrong in this, he's more than welcome to challenge me on this, but Renee Good and Alex Preddy were murdered in cold blood. He can challenge me as much as he wants to, but they were murdered in cold blood. And for
mm,
him, especially with the Renee Good thing, to try to challenge that and act as if she steered towards the agent, that's not what happened, man. Like, let's just call it for what it is. It's okay. You're not going to lose dollars. You're not going to lose an audience for challenging this and saying, like, yep, nope, she was murdered. That's it. Simple as that. You're not going to lose money for saying that, dude. You used to be that guy that said those things and coldly challenged both Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives. And now it seems like it's evident why he doesn't do those same challenges anymore.
mm,
Which it's not just Ruslan, it's a lot of people in the space. Once they see the money come in from the conservative space, it's just, it's hard to say no. And, I'm not going to act like I don't get it, but at the same time, it's like, dude, I'm affected by these things that you're pushing. And at one point, you were the guy that was pushing me to be a better musician. So it's disappointing to me, you know?
and yeah, like the thing about it is like, and I agree with you as well. Is like I'm not gonna agree with everything um Ruslan says, but just because I disagree with something, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a beef or anything like that for anyone
Not at all.
to disagree. But it's like, but what you have is real. You know what I mean? It's a real concern, grievance, all that, and all those things. Because I've known side a bit with this stuff over the years, but yeah, my thing especially was probably when I believe honestly I believe it was him talking about like the Gaza war just back and
Mhm.
forth. That was probably the only thing that rubbed me out the wrong way, just because with the way he talked about it, and I tried to go back and find the video because I was going to use it for the review as well to pinpoint like my exact issue with that. But for some reason I can't find the video.
Yeah. Proves
I
my
don't know if
point,
he
right?
took it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if he took it down or maybe I just didn't do a deep enough dive into it, but it was essentially him just making this argument that like, and again, this it goes back to, I think essentially part of what this album was really at the heart of essentially, and it was basically him just talking about how like he was basically making it basically they just made this argument that oh, there's so many atrocities happening around the world, like why is it always Gaza, why don't you cover those, and um like basically I'm paraphrasing like the argument, but typically people
Yeah.
use that argument when they kind of want to like divert away from other issues. But then
Mhm.
my issue with that is that then like come fast forward like 2 3 weeks later, you had the whole thing with like the Christian killings in Nigeria, which is a very concerning topic and issue. But the
Mhm.
problem with that is when he started opening his mouth and he started saying and when people in the comments just really just start saying like, oh, like why aren't people covering this and all that, and that for me, that is the issue I have with a lot of Western Christianity is because when you kind of do that type of stuff, you kind of lose a lot of social currency and people essentially like empathizing with your concerns and everything, and what you're covering. And essentially you go from one thing to the next day just saying like, yeah, like why aren't people covering this as much? And bro, it's literally like the reason is because you were literally just saying and not really kind of making fun of just the fact that like people were saying, what is it like? You were saying that like, yo, they should be like they should have the same amount of empathy for other things. You know what I mean? Like you were kind of trying to whitewash, you know, a concerning issue at the time. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to say in regards to that matter. But I think again, like a lot of stuff comes back to like what your album was about essentially. So I figured like it was definitely like I just wanted to create a moment when it came to talking about this stuff, just because I think like subject matters like this, like within music, like it just needs its own space, its own moment, and everything like that. In order for people to just like kind of just understand the other person's perspective and everything. But I got one more question. Sorry, I got one more question for you before I do
Yeah,
get off.
100%.
And it's something I never really asked about, but really, like, what is Blue Beetle? Because,
Yeah.
what is Blue Beetle? Yeah.
So Blue Beetle is essentially a superhero character. Although there have been other like Latino characters, like he was like probably the first like big like mainstream character. So for me, like the chorus is okay, if this blows up, will it even move the needle? I just want to put on Pa mi gente, and in Spanish that means my people. Blue Beetle. So it's essentially me
Mm.
saying that like if no one's going to be the Blue Beetle in the space, it's going to be me. Um,
Okay.
because while we have had people make a stance, like I told RG before, like on fast break interviews, I'm like he's the one that kicked the door down. But for better or for worse, I feel like nobody's really fully been the person to really be that guy. The closest we've had is RG, but RG, and we don't know what's going to happen with Raul too. I know that from conversations that I've had with him, he has told me that he is going to bring certain things up. I don't know to what extent. But as far as like we are aware, the only big moment that we've really had where a Latino has taken a hard stance that has caused controversy in the space has been RG's Raul EP. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, like there hasn't been someone that's fully like, and even that album, dude, like 4 a.m. is one of the arguably one of the best songs in the space, if you ask me. But that album, if you really listen to it, while there are a lot of records that cover it, there are certain records that don't entirely fit entirely the concept. It's not to say that the album is phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm.
Raul is incredible. But from top to bottom, it's not this like journey of like an immigrant. It's kind of this journey more so of like an immigrant that goes through this thing. And then at the end, there's this like coming to Jesus moment, you
Mm.
know? Whereas with this album, I felt like what was missing in the space was the reality that I feel like a lot of Christians don't want to hear, which is like, yes, come to Jesus, but also realize that maybe you're not going to have a solution anytime soon, or maybe never. And it's kind of like a story that you pick up every day. This is an everyday struggle for people like me. So if I
Mm.
have to be the one to say it and repeat it and be the voice for my people, then I will be the Blue Beetle for my people and be that superhero.
Sorry, I did want to ask one more question though.
Yeah, go for it, man.
And I mean, it's interesting that you did bring up RG. I mean, like, what is because CHH, like at least from what I've seen, like there's always been a portion and demographic of like Latino people like in the space and everything. And like how deep do you think that how deep do you think the roots go when it comes to a lot of these issues of like immigration? You know, how far does it hit for a lot of these people? You know what I mean? Just because I'm pretty sure a lot of these artists, they have family members that, you know what I mean, maybe in similar situations as yours, or or just other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes deep, honestly, man. Because like, if you, so for example, RG was born here, but his dad and his mom, came to this country. However, they came here, so obviously that's how they were affected by it. 350 and A3, shout out both of them. Those are the homies. They live in a border town, so there's a lot of things that they've seen. You can even listen to
Oh wow.
Gran Dolor by 350. He speaks on it pretty prevalently. That's actually a reference. When Mikey told me, hey, like I'm down to hop on the song, like how do you want me to approach this? I straight up told him, I'm like, dude, if you had made this one section off of Gran Dolor where you're talking about Jericho's walls, but they still want to build the wall, like if you had to like expand on that one line, like go even crazier. So it's like all these artists have something that traces back to that. Their personal opinions on it, I can't speak on. I can only speak on certain people because of opinions that I've like had with them and
Oh,
conversations I've had with them.
mm,
But it goes deep, man. There's people that are citizens here that are in the space. There's people that are potentially non-citizens. I can't speak on that either, but I do know that the rabbit hole goes deep as far as people that are directly affected by it. I'm just the one that had the, for lack of better words, the cojones to own up and to admit the fact that, like, yeah, I'm going through this right now. I'm fine. I have documentation, and right now I'm working on my citizenship.
mm,
But this hasn't been easy, and this thing did push me to eventually like deconstruct my faith. And in real time, I'm currently reconstructing it. But even though I'm the one that has had the courage to speak up, that doesn't mean that I'm the only one going through it. Like
yeah.
there's a lot of people that have family members, people that have lived in border towns that are going through this right now, whether it's directly or indirectly impacting them.
Hmm. And I think it's healthy, not just for the space of Christian hip hop, but just for at least what I mean, like even if it's a small portion of like the church, just understanding this, just because whenever the whole thing about like the church saying diversity and everything like that and talking about it but not really like practicing it, I find it's almost like, that thing when people do when, when a workplace says like, oh, we're a big family, like, when it's like, you know what I mean, like it's like, yeah, like
Yeah.
we're a family, but it's like, but then the workplace, they don't actually like practice it. Like sometimes that's how I feel the church can come off sometimes. And so just because it is a big body with so many moving parts, and so I figured like your story, I think it's a healthy way to approach the conversation, because then, what I mean, it's easy to see and understand like not everybody's situation is the same, and how do you help someone up? How do you help another brother and sister up in Christ
Yeah.
that is going under a different circumstance? I mean, how do you encourage them through what they're going through, and how do you help them find their identity in Christ, especially in a world that's kind of just like pulling them and trying to pick them apart? I think that's the biggest danger like churches really miss out on.
Yeah.
And yeah, for the people watching, if you made it to the end of this video, definitely go check out the album Yahir. And yeah, give it a listen, because I think you'll maybe pick up something from this, and not just on the music side, but I mean, more on just how Christians interact with the world and everything. But that's about it. Take care, guys, and we'll see you next video.